Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Foundation for Free Enterprise Education's Speaker Series. My name is Scott Lee, and today I'm very pleased to have with us a true entrepreneur and philanthropist, Morreen Rukin. Morreen is the president and founder of Creative Restaurant Solutions and Combined Resource Solutions Incorporated. She is also a trustee and board member for the Michael B. Rukin Charitable Foundation, a charitable foundation started by her family. Morreen holds bachelor's degrees in business and psychology from the University of New Hampshire and a master's in education from Penn State Great Valley. In addition to her very busy work life, she is mom to her daughter Sydney, who is currently a junior at Downingtown STEM Academy. In her spare time, she enjoys baking, sewing, hiking, paddleboarding, traveling, puzzles, and most of all, spending time with friends. Morreen loves mentoring other entrepreneurs as they start up their businesses, and today she's here to talk with us about entrepreneurship, starting and maintaining a business, and the art of becoming a great employee and maybe even a great employer. Welcome, Morreen. Thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Scott. It's great to be here.
Glad you're here. So let's dive right in. You described yourself early on when we were preparing for this talk as a solopreneur. I love that term. Tell us exactly what a solopreneur is, how you got started, what it means, all that kind of thing.
Terrific. Well, I can't take credit for the word because I believe I heard it somewhere else, but a solopreneur is somebody who has a business idea and kind of embarks out on their own to start it and formulate the idea. So I did that after working for many years in industry, predominantly in the restaurant industry. I decided that one day I was working for a Boston market franchisee. I had just finished the conversion from 110 Boston chickens to 110 Boston markets. McDonald's was buying us out, and I knew that there would be layoffs on my team. So I decided that that was my time to bow out. I knew I always wanted to be out on my own at some point because both my parents were entrepreneurs. You know, my mom owned very small companies like a cleaning service and a bakery, whereas my dad was an electrical engineer and he owned a very large corporation. So I knew I wanted to not always work for corporate America and do my own thing, but I wasn't quite sure when and what it would be. And then I had this idea to start a training and operations consulting firm. Went out on my own and did my own thing for a while. I remember that very first day in my new office, which was in my home, and I sat there and I stared at the phone, and we actually had, landlines back then. I sat there staring at the phone, wondering, well, will it ring, and when will it ring, and how soon will it ring? And then I realized that I had to be the one to pick up the phone and do the outgoing calls in order for the phone to ring. So that's how it started, and for the first 8 years, that's what I did. And from there, we grew, and I added to my team, which was phenomenal and has been a great experience. But it's not what I expected. I thought I'd be alone and a solopreneur, but I ended up making that transition to entrepreneur.
That's terrific, and we're going to dive into that shortly here. But everyone who dreams about starting a business, they start with themselves, basically. I came into a family business as well, and my father told me that the three most important relationships you're going to have in your business career are your banker, your lawyer, and your accountant, and not necessarily in that order. That's going to change. Now, this was back in the 1960s when he started his business, and those three relationships were critical. But what advice would you give to the budding entrepreneur as who to surround yourself with as they get started? Is it just the banker, lawyer, and accountant, or is it other people?
Well, I'm going to respectfully disagree with your dad, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I think that the best move that I made was surrounding myself with people who had been in the path of an entrepreneur, who had expertise that I didn't have or that I wanted to evolve, and mentors who knew me and knew me well, and knew which buttons to push to get me to challenge myself to be not only the best solopreneur, entrepreneur, or leader, but just the best version of myself. So very early on, I did surround myself with a board of directors, and I had somebody who excelled in financials, somebody who excelled in HR issues, and somebody who excelled in marketing. And I remember going to these three people and asking them, hey, I'm at a certain point in my company. I'm starting to grow. There's a lot I don't know. Would you be game on a monthly basis to be on a board of advisors for me? And it can be intimidating to ask that question. What I realized after asking the question of these three people is that I was giving them a gift. And I was giving them the gift of taking what they had learned and paying it forward. So, from there, I never felt uncomfortable to ask somebody to either mentor me or advise me. And it was something that really transformed not only my company, because it took my company to very different levels, but it also helped me evolve as a leader. I learned from them. I learned from their capabilities, and it really helped push my boundaries. So I think a board of advisors, I didn't have to pay any of them. So, most people are like, well, how could you afford that? I didn't. Again, they saw it as a gift that I was giving to them. I also have several mentors, and I think mentors from a variety of aspects of your life are essential. And normally you don't have just one. You may have a couple because they fill a different aspect that needs filling. But certainly the banker and the lawyer and the accountant, they are important. But I think that these other groups of people really help me transform myself and my company much more than those official people.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. But I got to ask you, when you said board, did you really form a board of directors for a sole proprietorship or a singly owned company? Most normal corporations that do have boards are larger and stuff. So are you saying that you had an official board of directors for a one-person shop?
No, the board started once I started growing. So once I added employees to my team, I then added on a board of advisors.
Got it. Thank you. So your businesses are all about helping other businesses retain employees and reduce their turnover and things like that. Give us an idea of what makes a great employee these days and what makes you hire one person over another.
So for me, personality is everything. I can train skill and I can train the technical aspect of what it is that we do. But if I have somebody that comes in with a vibrant personality and you can just tell they love interacting with people, that they can talk very easily, that they can look you in the eye when they're speaking to you, personality, hands down, is what sells me. So, that means having confidence but not being cocky. It means being willing to learn not only the way that we do things, but also learn to then challenge the way we do things. Whenever I do an interview, I always tell the candidate that our environment is one in that if you see something that can be done better, more efficiently, or you have just a different way to go about it, we expect you to speak up. And that does not mean that even on day one, if you're going through training, we do expect that you're going to ask questions and challenge the process. And most people look at me and they're like, wait, what? In my first day or first week of work? And the reality is when you hire somebody and they come in, they have the freshest set of eyes. And maybe they have a use of technology that we haven't experienced yet. We carry that joke further that if you have shared something and paid it forward, you then get to go home for the day. But we do expect that people that you have to share it because that's just how our environment works. So if I'm hiring somebody, it is really based on personality and seeing that will they be somebody that can challenge the system and challenge the processes in a comfortable way and in a way that is not combative. But, we're here to all support one another, and the team is like a second family. And we expect people when they come in to also, fit that. So.
That is fantastic. Yeah, we have a speaker at Pennsylvania Free Enterprise Week. His name is Kevin Davis, and he delivers a talk. And the title of the talk is, "It's your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude." And you just laid that out. It is all about attitude.
And I haven't heard him speak, but I firmly believe that is so, so true. And it's what gets you further in life. It's how you treat others, how you carry yourself, and personality.
That's awesome advice. That actually segues perfectly into the next question, Morreen. So when we were preparing for this talk today, you talked a lot about your culture in your company. For our viewers, you touched on it a little bit, but for our viewers, tell us exactly what your culture is and why culture is more important than pure technical skill.
So culture is one of those things in business that is so, it makes a lot of people scratch their heads like, well, how do you define it? But, there's no clear definition to it, but it's a feeling. It's a feeling that when you walk into a company, whether it be large or small, how are the employees? Are they happy? Are they engaged? Are they productive? Are the consumer, whoever the consumer might be, are they getting a good experience on the back end of the culture? And because it's more of a touchy-feely component than a concrete technical component, the firm definition is pretty elusive. But for me, it's that feeling. It's that environment where people are given the tools and the resources that they need to do the job so that that's not an obstacle. Let's take that out of the way. It's how are they treated on a daily basis. I, as a leader, every single day that I'm in the office, I walk around and I touch base with every single employee. Good morning, how are you? I know about their families. I know about the hardships that they're facing. I know about the great things that they're facing. And so it's having taken that time to connect with each and every one of them. And what they see in that I do that, they do that too. And they support one another and they care about one another. And it just creates an environment where it's safe. People know that they can come in, they're cared about, and because they're cared about, they care about others, whether it be their other team members or our candidates that we do the interviews with. So culture is so important. And as a leader, it's probably the biggest pressure that I have is just making sure, how do I maintain that? How do I keep it at the level at which it is at and people come to expect? And I had an aha moment recently where I think we're doing the right thing because we had a newer employee who came in. Technically, she was amazing. I mean, she picked up what we do like no other. It was fantastic. And about, I'm going to say, 4 to 5 months into her tenure with us, she resigned. And in some respect, I was surprised because, again, she picked it up so naturally. But in the other respect, she was never the team member who would come in and say, good morning, everybody. Or when she would leave, she wouldn't say goodbye to people. And that's fine. I mean, everybody has different personalities, but our culture, as I said, is one of which that's what we do. And so when she was asked why she was resigning, she said the place was too positive. I had the same reaction. At first I laughed and I'm like, wait, too positive? Like, because that's the thing. And the reality is her other job, she has a boss that is constantly yelling and reprimanding and even cursing at employees. And although I joked with my team and I said, do I need to start cursing at you guys through the intercom or something? But really not in my nature. It really told me that we are doing the right things in creating an environment where people feel comfortable, safe, and uplifted.
That actually blows my mind. That's an incredible story. I mean, that might be a first, It
is for me too, Scott. I literally was just like, oh my gosh, is this real?
Yeah, I'm stunned. Oh my God. Well, all right. So when you made that leap from solopreneur to entrepreneur, talk about that first time that you grappled with actually making your first hire. What were you thinking about? What were you looking for in people as you grew your company? And talk about literally that decision to make that first hire, because it's a big leap.
It is a very, very big leap. And as I said, I had been doing the solopreneur thing for about 8 years. And I was working with a client up in Boston. You may remember Ground Round. It was a restaurant concept, famous for, throwing the peanuts on the floor and, having that type of environment. And I was doing recruiting for them. I was facilitating at their GM conferences And one day my client called and said, hey, Morreen, you helped me hire, you helped me train. Now help me figure out why I have 87% turnover for managers. Now that's very, very high, even in the restaurant industry. So he said, I want you to do my exit interviews because when I do them internally, I get a very low completion rate. So I want to see what happens when you do it. Well, as a typical entrepreneur, I hung up the phone and I said, I have no idea what an exit interview is because I had one. But, 23 years ago, the internet was not as prevalent as it is today. But, I put pen to paper and came up with an idea of what I would think an employer would want to know. He and I tweaked it. And then I started doing those interviews on my own. And he was blown away because in a year and a half, he was able to take his turnover from 87% to 29%. Because I was gathering the data, gathering a lot more than he could, and then he was able to implement actions against the real reasons people were leaving. And
wow.
He then, as an entrepreneur, you can't ask for this, but he started talking to people at the Massachusetts Restaurant Association meetings, saying, oh my gosh, you have to use this company. This is what they do. This is what they've helped me accomplish. And again, I was just me at the time. So as I started to grow in terms of number of clients, I was at a crossroads. I'm a perfectionist. I apologize about it all the time because I'm a Virgo. And I knew that I couldn't maintain the quality and the caliber if I kept growing and staying by myself. And fortunately, through networking, I am a huge believer in networking. I met an amazing young lady who, when I interviewed her and sat down with her to hire her part-time, I could tell that she had the attention to detail. She had the personality for sure. She had the drive because this was actually going to be a second job for her. And we really just connected. And so I brought her on board as my first part-time employee. And then about 4 months later, she came to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about looking for a new job. Would you be a reference? And I thought, well, wait a second. If you're looking for a new job, maybe this is the time to jump off and take on a full-time employee. And I did. And from there we grew. And, at the peak, we've had 18 employees. Unfortunately, with COVID, we've had to let some people go. And that was the worst day in my entire career because they are family. And I take it very seriously, the commitment that I make to having team members. So. Yeah. But I have no regrets. She was with me for 6 years. She left for 3 to go work for another organization. And then she came back 4 years ago as our COO. So. Wow.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. And it sounds to me as though you hired for fit to you rather than fit to the job, because if you're 2 people, you're going to need to get along and really mesh. So that's great advice. Yeah. So, excuse me, many of your employers have leader in their titles. How do you define leader? Why do you call them leaders? What is leadership to you, and what advice would you give to our viewers as to how to become a great leader?
Another great topic that I could talk for hours on, but so I think being a leader, you have an obligation to put yourself out there and to be vulnerable in the same respect. You have to put yourself out there in a very positive manner, but you also have to be vulnerable in terms of admitting not just successes, but your failures too. And I do it often. I can laugh at myself very easily when I make a mistake. And I've tried to teach my team that as well. Because as a leader, you're under the spotlight. You're under the magnifying glass, and people are watching what you do. And in watching what you do, they then take on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I have a story. So when I graduated from college, I moved from New Hampshire down to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Little shocking. And I worked for a restaurant concept there, and they paired me with a female manager who I thought was there, who emulated what they expected out of a leader and out of a manager. And so here I was following this woman around, taking in what it is and how she treated people. And when I tell you she was a dictator, she was a dictator. She yelled all the time. she would often say to the employees, do this, do that, and point at what needed to be done versus, hey, let me show you because maybe we have a training gap. And every night I went home and felt sick to my stomach because I was becoming that leader. Because again, I assumed that this company saw her as the role model. And about a year into my career there, I was asked to transfer to do a new restaurant opening. And it was when I looked in the mirror and I said, now take what you've learned and become the leader that you are meant to be, because that is not comfortable. And I knew I couldn't continue being that type of leader because I literally felt sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
And I then was able to evolve into that leader who, took the time to show people what the expectations were. My team used to tease me because I would crawl under the booze with a flashlight and clean out, show them, the level of cleanliness that we needed to have. And I still keep in touch with some of those people today. And, to be a leader, you have to be willing to go above and beyond. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, and you have to be willing to take risks.
Perfect advice. Perfect advice. I could talk about this kind of topic all day, Morreen, but we're going to wrap it up here. And I have one last question for you. Finally, for our viewers today, what skills would you recommend that they have to become great employees and then maybe even great employers? Talking skills. Okay.
I think first and foremost, you need to be yourself. You can tell when somebody is fudging it and trying to be something that they're not. And in order to be yourself, when you're going on an interview, I recommend practicing before you go. Literally role play, whether it be with a friend, whether it be with a parent, whether it be with somebody that you know that works in the organization that you're interviewing with. Sit down and practice. Practice your message and practice being comfortable with who you are. Own it. I think that talking with others, I mentioned this earlier, I think technology today has taken away the art of being able to look somebody in the eye and actually being comfortable with it. So that takes practice as well. And I think that you need to do your research on the company that you're going to interview with. And I mean, really dig in. With LinkedIn, LinkedIn is one of the best tools to be able to research not just the company, but the people that are there, maybe the people that you're connected to who are there so that you can get some inside scoop. And it takes time to do that, but it is essential to do that. And then finally, I think when you become an employer, it's not so different. Because before every interview, I am researching the candidate that I'm going to speak with. I'm researching their background, and I am preparing my questions for them. I'm preparing myself, getting myself in the mindset by putting all other distractions aside. And so I don't think it changes so much when you go from interviewing to being an employee to being the employer.
Absolute perfect advice. I think basically you could sum it up in 3 words: do the work.
Mm-hmm. Do the work. Put in the effort.
Yep. Excellent. Morreen, this has been a wonderful trip down the road of entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, what makes great employees, what makes great employers. Thank you so much for sharing with us today your experience. We're so very grateful. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to reach out to Morreen, her contact information will be at the end of this video. But again, Morreen, thanks so much for joining us today. This was a fantastic session. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it very much.
All right. Be well.
You too. Take care.
All right.